know about the ABCs of exportation, this is where you should be. And just in case you don't want to do this alone, you can have a listening party. Ask people around you to head over to smegrowth.ng, where they can watch this live across different platforms. That's SMEGROWTH.ng. And they can watch this on YouTube or just join on Zoom. We're online and on air, just so you can be a part of the show, right? So share this with your friend, your neighbors, people outside the country. As far as you want the best for them and their personal finances and Nigeria's economy, then you have to share this. As I said earlier on today, we're talking about the ABCs of exportation. Now, last week on the show, we had a very interesting conversation on the impact of diaspora remittances. Brilliant conversation. By the way, I'll tell you how you can catch up with that conversation much later on the show. But today, let's focus on exportation. And I'll break this down for you. You know how you always see a product, and when you look at the back of the product or the label on it, you see made in China, or you see made in Turkey, made in Germany, made in Switzerland on those products, either an outfit or just something, a consumable. Well, today we want to find out how others outside Nigeria can see made in Nigeria on products they consume. And I'm talking all around the world. So we need to have this all important conversation. Yes, we see made in China on products, but how will they see made in Nigeria? Yes, we're talking that this evening, rather. And if you want to be a part of the show, you can call us or WhatsApp us or send us an SMS on these numbers 0916 257 1214. That's 0916 257 1214 or 0700 7977. One more time 0700 7977. We're live for you on the largest radio network, Radio Nigeria. Without taking too much of your time, let's get right into it. The ABCs of exportation. As always, I'm going to be inviting my panelists on the show. So I'm going to start by welcoming Salamatu Abubakar Ahmed, who is the head of Exports Office Trade and Exchange Department at the CBN. You're welcome, Salamatu. Also joining us on the show this evening is Oladipo Olariwaju, who's the department head Trade Finance at Keystone Bank. Also joining us on the show this evening to talk about the ABCs of exportation is Emmanuel Nwalo, who's team lead Export and Greek Fidelity Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the show.
Good evening.
Good evening, Kayode.
It's good to have you. And
Right.
let me just say, Salamatu,
Good evening, Kylie.
good evening. Happy Women's History Month. March is a special month.
It is.
So we're celebrating you. All of the men in the building are celebrating you and other women out there. See this.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Also welcoming Dr. Anthony Anishebe, who's a group head at Greek Exports. It's good to have you on the show. Okay?
Thank you, Kylie. Thank you. Nice to have you here.
Fantastic. So let's get right into it. I started off by saying the essence of this conversation is to help people see how we can begin to have made in Nigeria products in different parts of the world. Yes, we see made in China in this part, but people should also see made in Nigeria. But we don't want to take it for granted that everybody knows what exportation is all about. So Salamatu, if you could just do us the honors and define in the simplest form, what is exportation and how does it work? Salamatu.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's program. So, simply put, exports refers to the sale of goods and services, that is, between countries. So, for instance, I'm a Nigerian business, and I export cocoa, for instance, to Ghana. That's an export. I'm selling cocoa products or cocoa to a Ghanaian business or a Ghanaian importer. That's an export. And
Fantastic.
yes, so let me break it down. In Nigeria, broadly, what we do, our exports are categorized broadly into two groups: the oil exports and non-oil exports. The non-oil exports are categorized into goods and services. I think I'll stop there for now so that I don't, you know.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Salamatu. And yes, you've given a very good introduction to what exportation is all about. And it's as simple as that, basically. Very simple. Let me just allow the other gentlemen to have their opening comments regarding what exportation is, how it works, and just different angles to this, because that's the beauty of, this show. You get different angles to this one. So I'll go to Dr. Anichebe, but you may want to add to what Samata said, bring another angle to make this easier for our audience to understand.
Yeah, thank you, Kelly. I mean, she mentioned succinct in the sense that export is a process for which companies in one country they export goods and they're able to exchange goods and services. You understand? They're able to move goods and services from a particular country to another country. Then the mechanisms for these movements could be by sea, it could be air, it could be on land, like she mentioned about moving, selling cocoa from Nigeria to Ghana or vice versa. So those are the highlights of export. Then it's essentially driven from comparative advantage of trade, because nations are endowed with resources and they're able to sell to others in other countries where those resources are needed. So basically in export, you find out you're able to expand your market, you're also able to expand your revenue frontiers, and then you're able to expand their profitability because you have expanded your market, getting prices, increase prices by moving those goods from one country to another, especially when you do value addition. So that is the theme of exports. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Anichebe. So I'll come to Oladipo now and maybe widen the question a bit. So I'm all excited about exporting. I want to widen my market. I see opportunities out there, obviously, because it does well for my business, does well for Nigeria's economy. But then, Oladipo, can everything and anything be exported? And maybe add, can everyone or anyone be engaged in exportation? Because I imagine a lot of people are listening and saying, it sounds good. Can I jump in?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kadi. Good afternoon again, everyone. It's indeed a pleasure to be here. So like my seniors already said, yeah, exports is, the selling or the sending of goods across. Actually, it can equally be expanded into services also. Where you have personnel being sent abroad to provide one kind of service to another in the form of consulting, repair work, or even selling of software. But like you said now, can everything be exported? This will be coming from the perspective of a particular country, if we're looking at that question. Technically, everything should be exported, but when you personalize it into the various framework, you discover that no, not everything can be exported. Government usually have regulations in place to determine what can be exported from another country or not. And the various reasons vary from the fact that there is need for domestic consumption of certain products, which may not be enough. So those kind of items are restricted from exportation. And equally, the kind of demand in the market would equally speak to whether an item can actually be exported. And some goods are not even in international demand. So the fact that it's surplus in a particular country doesn't mean it's part of what can be exported. So let me just leave it at that while I let some of the other panelists broaden the response there. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Emmanuel, for that. But broadly speaking, everything should be exportable in that sense. But from time to time, you have regulations that say, well, we have only 4 of these things at home, and we're more than 4. So if you export it, we won't have anything. So keep it. But it's great to hear that in theory, literally everything is exportable depending on the policy of government. And I'm coming to Emmanuel now. So we've seen the side of everything or anything being exportable depending on government policy. But in terms of entry level, anything for people listening out there who are thinking, depending on, can I become exporter? You know, they always say importer, exporter. In terms of entry, so can everyone, anyone get involved in exportation, Emmanuel?
Okay, thank you, Kayode. Okay, so taking from the last panelist, what he said, I think the question was if everything is exportable out of Nigeria. So I would say to the extent that those things are not in the export prohibition list, then they are exportable. What I mean by export prohibition list, these are list of items that the government has put in place, defining items that cannot be exported out of Nigeria. And this ranges from maize, from animals classified as endangered species to scrap metals and a host of others. So, but to the extent that there is a buyer for a product, then and it is not in that export prohibition list, then that item can be exported. So I just needed to put that out there. Okay. So back to your question, what does it take to export, right? What does it take for an individual of a business, to export? Okay, under our regulations, I think one of the key items that it takes to export, once you can sort that out, 2 key items. One is that you must have an export license. So basically, you need to go to Nigerian Export Promotion Council, to acquire an export license. That now makes you legally able to export. That puts you as an exporter. And then secondly, you now need to also go out there to get an export contract. So what that export contract simply means is for you to go out there and look for a buyer of whatever item that it is that you want to export. So to that extent, once you have an export license, which gives you the legal rights to export out of Nigeria, and then you're able to source for a buyer out there that is interested in that product that you want to sell to him or to her or to the company in this case, then of course an export transaction can take place.
Kayode, I think you're muted.
Yeah, Kayode, we can't hear you. Wow.
Kayode, your microphone is still muted.
I don't know if
We can't hear you. Not sure you can hear me.
I'm not. None of us can hear him, and he doesn't seem to know.
Matu, question is for you. And I want us to step back a little bit for people who may be wondering, what is the essence of this conversation? Why are we having this conversation? What is even the impact of exportation on the economy? So I want us to tie that or link it to the big picture so people can begin to see how these activities add up or otherwise to the nation's economy. Salamatu.
Thank you. So, okay, the previous 2 speakers have spoken about exports, and if we look at the transaction dynamics for exports, you know that you're selling to another country, and then obviously, when you sell, they won't pay. You are expected to receive your payment in a foreign currency. So that receivable that you get in foreign currency for nations is a source of foreign exchange supply. And for countries who do a lot of export, it creates a positive impact on your balance of payment. It stabilizes your exchange rate. So I know a lot of Nigerians go all over talking about how the naira is depreciating, how naira is so amount to the dollar. If we had more inflows, so if we're exporting more and then receiving inflows, because for every export you receive your payment in foreign currency, then of course our supply of foreign exchange will be higher, for instance, than the demand for it, or there will be an equilibrium, and then we'll have foreign exchange stability, which of course passes through to what we're seeing, the general increases in price levels that we're encountering, largely because of the fluctuations in exchange rate. So that's why there's a lot of emphasis on export, because it's a major source of FX supply. Thank you. We can't hear you, Kayode. Wow.
Kyle, we can't hear you.
Get any business person excited. The thought of having a bigger market for your product. So thank you very much, Salamatu, for that. And I want to come to Dr. Anichebe now. And again, I want to always link this conversation and make it easy for people to contextualize it. What are some of the most common export products from Nigeria? Now, when you look at it, because you know how people think, they're like, okay, which one is tested? Which one is proven? Which one is trusted? So looking at the data, what are the most common export products from Nigeria? Dr. Anichebe.
Okay, thank you, Kayode. So for like Samat mentioned, you know, there's a oil and non-oil exports. Under the non-oil exports is where you have preponderance of agricultural produce, you know, where you have what we used to call cash crops, you know. So you have cocoa, you have cashew, you have sesame, you have hibiscus, you have soya beans, so a whole lot of agricultural products that are being exported. You could also have some species of vegetables, and you know, you backstop it with a number of other industrial items that are being exported. You can have textiles, for example, being exported. You can have processed leather. The prohibition is not on processed leather; it's about raw leather and hides. So, but when you transform it, add value, you're also able to export it. So these are typically the available and prevalent export commodities. So you know that you have that Nigeria offers the international market a whole lot of that. The soya beans has added major sesame. So these are important and very topical export commodities. Some industrial, now you have some processed metal. You understand? And you know, when you melt iron and you know, you're able to transfer, you can also export it. So those are the kind of exportable commodities that are prevalent in the Nigerian space. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anichebe. So you heard that agriculture is top on that list, but that's not to say there aren't opportunities in other sectors. So I'm going to take this to Oladipo now and ask. I know someone earlier said it's not just goods, tangible goods that are exported. Services are also exported. So maybe you want to broaden that conversation in the sense of what are some of the most prominent, most common export products from Nigeria, and maybe some of the ones we are missing out on as well. Tifo.
Thank you, Kayode. The concept of competitive advantage is actually part of what determines, you know, the export items or products of a company. And that's simply to say wherever you are strong in as a country, just like has already been said, agricultural products. When you look at Nigeria, you can see, the vast lands, very fertile land resources that we have, which essentially speak to the kind of tropical goods that we produce in cash crops. But equally, in terms of services, we are very skilled. We see Nigeria exporting software in terms of knowledge software now. You see people actually working remotely. It's a kind of export when we're breaking it down all the way. But I think as a strong suit, our strength really lies in agricultural produce as well as some of the other mineral items that are exported. So essentially that it would bring an interesting conversation to it if we are able to further add value to some of the items that we export. I mean, for instance, it's not just enough to export cocoa. It would add enough value to it if we are able to manufacture cocoa into coffee, chocolate, and all the other derivatives, and then export all of that. Part of how to widen and broaden the conversation into what we are able to export. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Oladipo. I think Emmanuel may want to comment on this one. I think it was you that made that statement about exporting services as well. And Dipo has spoken about the cost as well, just how much may be coming in terms of exportation. So we know where we're at and where we want to get to. But again, what are some of the most common export products from Nigeria, and what may we be also missing out on, Emmanuel?
Okay, so the common one I believe a lot of people may not necessarily reckon with is music and entertainment. So a number of times you hear that maybe Davido has closed out the O2 Arena, for instance, or any other Nigerians. We have a lot of musicians right now that are selling out all the major event spaces overseas. Okay, when they do this is services export. So we are exporting a lot of entertainment out there, and a lot is being earned as a result. And I'm sure when CBN finalizes, around, programs and activities to also capture that will also be a major source of effects, to the country. So entertainment is key. It's one of the biggest, Nigeria's big major exports. Okay, so I just needed to bring that into light because a lot of people tend to neglect, that bit. So that is one. Apart from the softwares and all of this, of course, medical services. I have a lot of Nigerians who are rendering services without having to travel overseas. And one thing about services export is you don't necessarily have to transport yourself physically to the other location. So if you have a Nigerian, for instance, who is conducting telemedicine, or educational services online and things like that, that is one of the areas that a lot of Nigerians are also making a kill as far as FX. Yeah.
Fantastic. There you have it. Some areas that we may not have paid attention to. Well, it was right there, actually, just in our faces. But for the obvious fact that we look at the tangibles more than intangibles, I realize that we may just be leaving some of these very vital areas out. Of course, let's go back to the regulator, the CBN. And Salamatu, we've talked about what is exportation, and you graciously broke it down for us. We've talked about why. Again, you spoke about the why. Why is it important to have this conversation? What does it do to Nigeria's economy and businesses? But I want to talk about how now, and just go straight to it. What are the options for shipping export products from Nigeria? Because we've talked about export, but which routes? How do they find their way to, let's say, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, the United Kingdom, United States? What are the routes through which exports go? Salamatu.
Thank you. So there are different transportation modes of transportation for export. You can go by road, you can go by rail. In Europe, for instance, where they have rail connectivity, they can do it by rail. You can go by sea, you can go by air. And in Europe, for instance, where they export gas and other commodities through pipelines, that too is a mode of transportation for exports. So there are different modes depending on the item and, the option that you choose. And bearing in mind that you have Incoterms too, the International Commercial Terms of Trade, which guide, the risk, where your risk starts and ends. And those are some of the commercial terms that will help to determine which mode you may likely want to take or adopt as a mode of transportation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Salamatu. So rail, sea, road, air, depending on what exactly it is that you are exporting. Some will prefer air if they're exporting. They're not really that heavy as much, and the volume is not as much. But if you're doing heavy volumes, then you obviously want to go by a sea, the containers and all of that. And if there's a rail option, which is, of course, not really available in this part of the world, at least as at now, well, that's an option. Maybe you can do connecting from another country to another country when you move it out of the country. And of course, there's also the road option, which a lot of people also use, particularly for neighboring African countries. So these options are there depending on what is it that you want to export. This is the Financial Literacy and Public Enlightenment Radio Show brought to you by the Bankers Committee. And today on the show, we have a robust panel discussing the ABCs of exportation. I've learned quite a lot how to go about exportation, what exportation is, how it affects or impacts Nigeria's economy, some of the most common export items in Nigeria and all of that. And you can be a part of the show, as I've said. You can call us right away on 0916 257 1214. That's 0916 257 1214. You can also call 0700 7000 977. That's 070 0700 0977. We're due for a break right now, and when we return, I promise to take your calls, but we have more questions for our panelists. I mean, how can you identify export potentials? How can you identify markets? Talked about markets. How do you know which market to sell to and other factors? That's when we return in a moment. Stay with us.
Makes sense. I come here, please, sorry. Calm down. I go pay. Please, I no fit pay. Chai. Why everything just cost like this?
Na dollar.
Dollar? How?
Baba, na true now. See your shoe, made in Italy. Your shirt made in Turkey. Even car where you carry come, made in Japan.
How all these ones think affect dollar?
You know, say for the price of dollar to come down, get what we suppose to do. We suppose they export past wetin we dey import. We suppose they buy more made in Nigerian products. Make we dey support local businesses. And if we go carry dollar enter Nigeria or any other foreign currency, make we dey use international money transfer agents.
This my friend, it took get sense. You know what will happen? Give am the bill, make it pay. Country people, make we join hand, reduce the pressure on top our naira. This message na from Bankers Committee. It makes sense.
I come here, please, sorry.
Calm down. I go pay.
Please, I no fit pay.
Chai.
Why
everything just cost like this?
Na dollar.
Dollar? How?
Baba, na true now. See your shoe, made in Italy. Your shirt made in Turkey. Even car where you carry come, made in Japan.
How all these ones think affect dollar?
You know, say for the price of dollar to come down, get what we suppose they do. We suppose the export pass waiting with the import. We suppose they buy more made in Nigerian products. Make they support local businesses and they support local businesses. And if we go carry dollar enter Nigeria or any other foreign currency, make we they use international.
This make it makes sense.
I come here, please.
Calm down. I go pay.
It's no PPO.
Chai,
Why
everything just cost like this?
Na dollar.
Dollar. How?
Baba, not true now. See your shoe, made in Italy. Your shirt made in Turkey. Even car where you carry come, made in Japan.
How all these ones take affect dollar?
You know, say for the price of dollar to come down, get what we suppose they do. We suppose the export pass waiting with the import. We suppose they buy more made in Nigerian products. Make they support local businesses. And if we go carry dollar enter Nigeria or any other foreign currency, make they use international money transfer agents.
This is my friend. It get sense. You know what's going to happen? Give up the bill, make it pay. Country people, make we join hand, reduce the pressure on top our naira. This message now from Bankers Committee.
Yes, you heard that. Let's join hands together to improve our economy, improve our naira. And that's what this show is all about. Welcome back to the Financial Literacy and Public Enlightenment radio show brought to you by the good people at the Bankers Committee. And today we're talking about the ABCs of exportation. And we have a very capable panel on the show this beautiful Monday evening. Salamatu Abubakar Ahmed is the head of Exports Office Trade and Exchange Department at the Central Bank of Nigeria. We have Dr. Anthony Anichebe, who's Group Head Agric and Export Polaris Bank. So Ladipo Lariwaja's Department Head Trade Finance Keystone Bank, and Sir Emmanuel Waller, Team Lead Export and Agric Fidelity Bank. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for staying with us. Just before we went on that break, we talked about the options for shipping export products from Nigeria. But let's now talk about the products themselves. And I'll go over to Dr. Anichebe now. And, you know, I have a good mind, Dr. Anichebe. I have this shoe that I produced yesterday, right? Hypothetically speaking, I'm a shoemaker. And I think the shoe is really nice. I think they would appreciate it in Italy, right? Never mind that it's Nigerian leather. But Nigerian leather is great, right? So I'm thinking I should export this product. So first, Dr. Anichebe, what do I need to consider? How do I know if this shoe that I want to export that I think is really good is fit for export and is going to serve that market? What are things I need to do before jumping into it?
Okay, thank you, Kayode. The first thing to do is you are considering export of the shoe which you have produced in Nigeria. The first thing is to be able to ensure the economy is right. Where are you going to export to? Is there opportunity? This shoe, is it in demand? Is it kind of footwear that is demand in Italy where you want to export the product? Once you have confirmed that it's in demand, then the next thing is putting yourself in a good state for export. And putting your state in a good state for export, you know, starts with your registration. You know, one, are you a business entity? So you want to incorporate a company, you register a company with a credit corporate affairs commission. So that you register a company with corporate affairs commission. Then the next thing is that you need to register with the Nigerian Export Promotions Council, you know, which entitles you to registration as an exporter. You must be registered with the Nigerian Export Promotion Council to be able to export. You know, so once you have registered with the Nigerian Export Promotions Council, then you know, then that means you also now advance. You're able to now look at all the other things to say, okay, fine. Do I have a viable market? You know, do I have an off-taker that is ready to pick these products? Is there a buyer? Is there a contract? Then that means that you have to firm up a contract, because I mean, the objective of exports is not a showbiz, is to get money, get prepaid and get market and get opportunities of earning the foreign currency. So you need to make sure that you have a contract. Then that contract is on its own also specify the quality specification, i.e. the kind of shoe that you want to export. Is it bound in contract? Is it specified to the extent that it will be easily identifiable? The quality mark will be established so that there's a reference point, because I mean you could easily export the shoe, and the shoe is found short of the specification. So it's very important to make sure that whatever you're exporting is in line with standard. The standard specification must be assured so that you're able to guarantee payment. Then after you have established the quality, the next thing is how are you going to be paid? You understand how are you going to be paid? What is the payment model, and what is the export route? You understand? It's going to be by sea, it's going to be by air. Then how am I going to be paid? Are you going to do those things based on financial documentation in terms of, is it letter of credit, which is an agreement between the exporter and the importer's bank, you understand, to be able to take up and pay upon presentation of documents that you have exported. Then is it also based by bills for collection, which is also another undertaking, implementing the instruction of the customer, banks implementing the instruction of the customer. Then under the bills for collection, you need to know, is it documents against payments? I mean, when you present documents you get, or is it acceptance? Is there credit rating? In which case, bank says, okay, fine, you're going to get your documents. So the major thing is that you need to know where the exporter is, and know the country where he is. You understand? Then before you go to shore up all those details, the devil is always in the details, which is the mistake that exporters do. You must be patient to be painstaking. Look at it for the quality thing, make sure that the contract is firm and
Right.
advised. So these are all the nitty-gritties that that must be in the bucket before you must discuss this payment. You must send a sample. Make sure, if possible, if the importer wants a sample, you send him a sample. Otherwise, the sample must be specified, as in the agents that you have having specified. Look at the moisture, look at the quality, look at the specification, look at the grade. So those things must also be discussed before you look at it. So so we must be able to do some intensive research to know where these buyers are, and through the Chamber of Commerce, through the embassies, they're proving this. The embassies will also show you people that are also blacklisted in the past.
Right.
And thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, Dr. Anichebe. There you have it. And you managed to squeeze in all the old process into 2 minutes. For someone listening out there, they may be thinking, what? To export is not a joke, or it's not beans. But first, if you're in that boat, I want you to understand that there are people exporting as I speak with you right now, and they don't have two heads. So one, yes, it may seem a bit complex, but it is doable. And that's why we're here on this show, to help you walk through that whole process. So I'm coming to Dipo and Emmanuel now, and listening to Dr. Anichebe, some people may think this is really complex. So I want you to speak to them one after the other. How can exporters or potential exporters navigate the complexities of exportation, right? And I'll begin with Dipo and go to Emmanuel. How can exporters navigate this seemingly complex process? Is there someone to hold their hands? Is there a shoulder to cry on? Is there a step-by-step process?
Yes, thank you, Kadi. Like you said, Dr. Anichebe actually did a very, very good job capturing all the processes. And in fact, one of the ones that caught my attention is the one where he mentioned a contract. The idea of a contract between an exporter and the potential buyer offshore across in the other country is to make sure that they have an agreement. The agreement will range, across all the factors that relate to that exportation. It's may not even be for a single shipment. It may be a contract that guides the kind of goods that the exporter is going to be sending. And that kind of specification allows the exporter to do his or her homework locally, make sure that the kind of product, because I think your initial question about the specify the kind of product, that the kind of product meets the specification of the other country. It's not enough that the buyer, the potential buyer, likes the goods and wants it that way. There's also need to ensure that that good as is going to be accepted in the other country in whatever form or specification that it is. I understand it's not all Nigerian leather that is actually exportable to Europe. I think it has to have a certain degree of processing before it can go. If that kind of background research and knowledge is not in place, the possibility of forfeiting the goods themselves are actually there. So the contract is going to specify the type and the nature of the goods in terms of the quality that is required, so that there will not be any kind of argument later in the future. And of course, Dr. Anichebe also mentioned the mode of payment. It is very, very important that you're not just selling your goods across, you have a means to collect your payment. You have to determine the currency of payment. You have to determine the mode of payment, whether it's going to be via telegraphic transfer, which is just a simple transfer from one account to another account in another country, or whether it's going to come in a documentary format, which means that there has to be proof with the evidence of documents before the other party will instruct their bank to pay. All of that have to be documented in the contract. So the contract is a very, very essential part. It's one of the first things that somebody should consider when prospecting, for entities to whom they will sell the export products. I'm going to allow Emmanuel to, take on some of the other aspects that we have there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dikwa.
All right, just before Emmanuel comes in case you're just joining us, this is a Financial Literacy and Public Enlightenment radio show brought to you by the Bankers Committee, and I'm going to be taking your calls right after Emmanuel's response. So you can call us on 0916-257-1214 if you have any questions for our panelists on the business of exportation, the ABCs, anything on your mind that you're not clear about. You can call us on 0916-257-1214 or 0700, that's 0700-700-0977. I'm going to be taking your calls right away. But Emmanuel, you wanted to add to it, particularly the question around, navigating the seemingly complex terrain of export. But I'll quickly take this call, Emmanuel, and then we can lump these issues together. Good evening. Welcome to the Financial. What's your name and where are you calling from, sir?
My name is Adam West. I'm calling from Kiloja.
You're welcome to the show, Mr. West. What's your question?
I just want to make some little contribution.
Right.
I have listened to your conversation and just want to come small contribution. You see, we have a lot to export. Our hide and skin is no more functioning. Our granite pyramid has all disappeared. What about our cocoa? Is there no more nothing to talk about cocoa again? We have a lot of things to export. For instance, the skin which we normally export far back then is what we are using as promo now. Most of the 5-star hotels. So we have turned into consumption instead of it. And our granite, which we export chocolate into England and the rest of them, are all meant to be, we chop it down locally. Our corn is used for conflict, and so many other things are all not stable anymore.
Right.
So, my brother, We have a lot to do. We need the government. We need to come back to our table and think more. Adam West of Pleasure.
Thank you very much, Mr. Adam West. Very thoughtful contribution there about Nigeria having a lot to export, and that's why we're having this conversation, to open our eyes, jar the policymakers and you and I who will take action. So, Emmanuel, over to you now. That's a Nigerian sharing some of the pains in his heart about things we have to export. But, it may appear as though the terrain is complex. So perhaps you want to speak to some of the points raised earlier.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So I'll probably just talk about, I think Dipo spoke so much about that. So a lot of transactions go south if the exporter doesn't take time to look at the contract. So you can actually being a successful exporter or otherwise would actually start from that simple document. So which is also why we advocate and tell exporters, especially for the budding ones, that they must, run these documents through their staff, through their banks. So the thing is, you don't just go ahead to sign that document, request for a draft. Okay, so that you can take that to your banker who will look at it and advise you, because there are oftentimes a lot of pitfalls in those documents. So that is one. And then secondly, you need to also you need to evaluate the destination country. Now, if it is edible goods, for instance, if it's something that is edible and you're exporting, for instance, to America or maybe to Europe, you need to understand what certifications that is required, because they take these things very, very seriously, right? So you need to understand what are the documentations, what are the certifications that you need to obtain to be able to ship those things to those countries. Otherwise, even though you have gone ahead to sign a contract and there are laws and rules in those destination countries that you didn't factor or didn't take into consideration, then there's a likelihood that once you make those shipments, then the shipments are going to be stopped by customs and destroyed. And in which case, you can actually be the one paying for the cost of those destructions, actually. So you need to first and foremost, you need to consult with a specialist, to look at your export contracts. And then secondly, you must take cognizance of the destination country and, the rules guiding, export of products, into those countries, so that you don't run foul, of their laws. Very important.
Well, thank you very much, Emmanuel. There you have it, some of the key points to note. But we have another caller on the line. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Financial Literacy Radio Show. What's your name and where you calling from?
Hello? It's Adam West. Trying to make the point again.
All right, quickly, Mr. West, so we can take other callers.
What I'm trying to make now is that we don't need to sell export finished goods. Yes, on gone are the days. We used to export skin, and our skin is one of the best in the world. And why? We only need to do quality control. We need a fantastic quality control system in the country. We make sure that high standards before we take it to anywhere that is required. Is needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adam West, calling from Suleja, making a passionate plea yet again for the export of skin. And I think it was Dr. Anichebe who talked about the quality, how some of these countries also have, quality control. And Mr. West has also talked about that, ensuring there's proper quality control. I know we've mentioned the NEPC, the Export Promotion Council, and these are some of the agencies that are charged with the responsibility of helping exporters through these seemingly complex but walkable route of exportation. But as we begin to wind down on the show this evening, I'll come to Salamatu yet again. And to Nigerians listening out there, what advice would you give to new exporters just starting out, just thinking of starting out? What advice would you give them in terms of walking the ropes? Perhaps you might want to speak to something Mr. Adam West said as well, Salamatu.
Thank you, Kayode. Well, in our line of work, we see a lot happens with exports. And for any exporter that intends to go into the business, I would advise that first you do a proper research before you go into the business. You need to know your market. You need to understand their demands. You need to know their standards. The issue of packaging is a challenging one for Nigerian exports. I know we have structural issues which are not, are beyond the exporters, but even for the exporters, there are some practices that have to be checked. Like, some of the farming practices are not, they are not in line with environmental and sustainability standards, with certifications globally. The issue of unacceptable use of pesticides is a challenge, and that's a reason for some of the rejections of our
Salamatu,
exports.
pardon me for a moment to a button. We have another caller on the line. I just want to take as much as we can. Perhaps you might want to respond to that. Good evening. Where are you calling from? What's your name? All right, looks like we lost that one due to connection. But Salamatu, please, you can land on the point you were making.
Okay, so that's it. So what I was going to advise is for any new
Well, we'll try to get connection back to Salamatu Ahmed of the Central Bank of Nigeria. Just momentarily lost connection with her. But gentlemen,
in the business of
perhaps
regulation,
final
please
words
comply.
on this conversation. We're back next week again with case studies of successful exporting nations. But final words on this AEC of exportation. And Dr. Nichebe, over to you.
Well, I just want to, thank you once again. I just want to reassure our viewers that there are good opportunities in the export space. I mean, people that are doing on cocoa, they made a lot of margins last year, 2023, 2024, when cocoa moved from close to 3 million naira per metric ton, locally to about 14 million. So you know what it means. So there are opportunities in the export space. All we need to do is that we need to play by the rules.
All right.
Make sure that if you formalize your exports, make sure you look out for the details. Make sure that as you're exporting, make sure you also understand the trade nuances of the country you're exporting to. Look at the barriers, things that may pose challenge in getting your payments. Have a long view of the whole transaction, and then you can start small. The opportunities can start small by way of groupage. You can form a group and then undertake export. You mustn't have billions before you can undertake export. There are various commodities. You have soya beans, light and heavy bearing financial products. So you can
thank
do
you,
the
Dr.
light
Nichebe.
ones. Thank you so much.
I like the point you made about not having billions before you start exportation. So I'll allow Emmanuel and my friend Oladipo to have the last comment on this one. Just one or two sentences. We're totally out of time as we wind down.
Okay, yeah. So I will advise Nigerians to, especially for people who are going for export business, to seek for knowledge, to seek for capacity. Like we always tell people that technically a lot of Nigerians can do import, but obviously not everyone can do export business. So there's need for capacity building to understand the intricacies of the business.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Now to you, Oladipo.
Yes, and also very, very much important is the regulatory aspect. Like we know, the export sector itself is guided by regulations, and it's very, very important for would-be exporters to take notes and be mindful of all these regulations. For instance, the repatriation of export proceeds. It's not enough to just sell. When those foreign exchange come in, they have to be repatriated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen and ladies. It's been an amazing conversation talking about the ABCs of exportation. So once again, thank you for being very resourceful. Salamatu Ahmed, Head of Exports Office at the CBN, Dr. Anthony Anichebe from Polaris Bank, Oladipo Olariwaju from Keystone Bank, and Emmanuel Waller from Fidelity Bank. On behalf of the production crew, the engineers, Daniel Kuye, Rewan Oladejo Olatunde Abdulatif, the studio manager, Edo Eusebio, the assistant producer, Oluleye Adeboye, and the producer, of course, Maria Woma, and the director, Lagos Operations, Bolanle Woyemi. I want to say a big thank you for joining us yet again on the show. We're back next week, and we're talking about countries that have exported and are succeeding at it. Until next time, I am Kayode Okikulu, and don't forget to always make profit in all that you do. Goodbye. God bless.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Kayode.
everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you, colleagues. Thank you, team. Thank you so much.
Enlightenment Month, the Bankers Committee has come up with the 2025 MSME Radio Show. The objectives is to deepen MSME understanding of the evolving changes in the subsector, business process for both and various national and international policy, financial experts from deposit money banks, development partners, regulatory institutions, and successful entrepreneurs would arm listeners with premium financial knowledge. Tune in to the network service of Radio Nigeria between 5 to 6 p.m. every Monday. Topics to be covered are cashless policy and alternative payment channels, contactless payment options, sourcing FX, agency banking, raising capital, and cross-border trade. To find out more or register, visit www.smegrowth.ng on Facebook and Instagram at Bankers Committee, FLPE.